To make painting sections of this model easier, I decided to paint it in sub-assemblies. There are many times where doing this can help you achieve a superior paint job because certain areas of the model would be nearly impossible to paint to a high standard because of its pose. So if you have the luxury to do so, I suggest you try it. We begin by priming our Techmarine black. The technique that I use uses the black primer to help us with shading the model. We will talk more about this later. I pre-shade many of my models by using the zenithal highlight technique before applying color. This does three things for us. First, it gives us a roadmap of sorts to follow when applying our colored highlights later. Second, it really helps with giving us a good contrast between the brighter highlights on the model and the darker shadows. High contrast on our models really makes them stand out, so we really want to push our contrast. The colors we apply are naturally brighter over the white primer and naturally darker on where the black primer was left unhighlighted. Finally, using the white zenithal highlight over the black primer gives us very quick, high contrast color transitions with very little effort. You apply a zenithal highlight by spraying your model with white primer from directly above and at a 45-degree angle. By doing so, we create natural highlights on our model where the light source, in this case shining from directly above, would naturally illuminate and brighten our model. I'm using a fairly high flow of paint here. You might benefit by dialing the flow of paint coming out of your airbrush down and more slowly building up the highlights. As you gain more experience, you can dial the flow of paint back up and move more quickly. As you go, add more white to areas that would naturally receive more light. This will help us push the contrast on the model. Now we can begin adding color to our model. I use Mephiston Red as my base color. Slowly build up the red on the model by using the same zenithal highlight technique that we used in our pre-highlighting step. As you go, be careful not to completely cover the black primer and go easy on areas where there are midtones. We don't want to completely cover these midtones with paint because we will lose the dark to light transitions we created with our zenithal highlight. You almost want to just tint your model with color rather than completely covering it with the red base. I wanted to pause here and really point out how easily and quickly we created some really great color transitions. You can really see a good example of this on the knee armor. On the top of the knee, we have a bright highlight with a great graduated transition to the darker lower knee. We achieved all of this by using the simple zenithal highlight technique. The helmet is another really great example of how using the zenithal highlight technique produces some really great results. To push our contrast, we move to a brighter shade of red and emphasize areas where light would naturally hit our model. As you do this, be sure to go slowly and to only apply this highlight to a smaller area of the model than we did with our base coat. As you go, focus on areas like the top of the power pack and the top of the mechanicum cog, the tops of the shoulder armor, the lower sections of the thigh plates, the tops of the knees and the feet, as well as the backs and lower sides of the leg armor. When highlighting the helmet, only spray from directly above the helmet. This will provide you with the best results. Our first highlight is now complete. Next, we will apply a second highlight of an even brighter shade of red. This time, however, while still utilizing the zenithal highlight technique, focus on the same areas you did in the first highlight, but narrow it down even further, making sure not to completely cover your first highlight from the last step. Once again with the helmet, only spray from directly above for the best results. Our second highlight is now complete. Next, we will emphasize the very deepest recesses of our model by using an oil wash to shade these areas. I prefer to use oil washes for this application because of its unique properties. Oil washes naturally wick into the recesses of our model, reducing the time and effort we expend in the process. Unlike acrylic washes, oil washes, once dried, are very easily removed from the unwanted areas. This allows you to move more quickly, as you can quickly clean your model up in the next step. If you were to use a standard acrylic wash here, you would have to take your time and move more slowly. Because, once dry, acrylic washes are nearly impossible to remove, so if you make a mistake, you have to go back and use your base color and touch things up. Things can look a little messy at this stage, and you may feel like you've ruined your model, but fear not. Let the wash dry and we will clean everything up in the next step. Because oil washes are solvent-based, we need to use a solvent-based cleaner to remove excess wash. Mineral spirits are perfect for this. They easily clean the wash away and does no harm to the underlying acrylic paint. Simply dip a Q-tip in the spirits and gently wipe away the unwanted wash. All of the wash that we want in the recesses will be left behind. Our model is now completely cleaned up, and we have finished the recess wash step. Now that we have our deepest recesses emphasized, we're going to emphasize the edges of our model by edge highlighting. Edge highlighting can be difficult because we're trying to paint very thin straight lines. When you can, use the edge of the bristles of your brush to trace the very sharpest edges. This makes edge highlighting much easier. When you can't use the edge of your brush and you must use the tip to apply the edge highlight, slow yourself down, brace your arms on your chair or your desk, and your hands and fingers against themselves. This will aid you in steadying your hands as you trace the outlines of your model. When doing the helmet, take extra care to really apply thin, straight lines. The head is generally one of the main focus points of your model, so we really want it to stand out and look good. As you paint the helmet, focus on the hard edges of the crest, the tops of the earpieces, and the front of the face shield. Doing so will really make your helmet pop. Our first edge highlight is now complete, and we're ready to move on to the second edge highlight. When applying the second edge highlight, narrow your focus down to the very topmost edges to really emphasize them. As you go, make sure that you use an even thinner line and leave some of your first edge highlight exposed. This second edge highlight really helps to make your mini pop. Another technique you can use is to place very small dots of the bright color you're using to the very corners of the edges. This also aids in really making your highlights shine. The sharp edges of the thigh armor plate are a really good example of an area where the edge of your bristles really come in handy. Notice how much I brace my hands and fingers against themselves and the model to really get good control and apply thin straight lines. Just as in the previous highlight, really strive for good results on the helmet. We really want it to stand out and look great. Remember again to narrow your focus here and apply this second highlight very sparingly. Here are the results from applying our second edge highlight. This step is really straightforward. Just apply the silver to all of the proper details. Take your time and paint carefully. You don't want to get any silver on your beautifully painted armor plates. We've brought all of the bare metal parts to a bright shine, and now we're ready to add some depth to them. We add this depth by washing all of the silver parts with Nuln oil. This is a traditional acrylic wash and is perfect for this application. There isn't much of a chance for spotting the silver with the wash as long as we apply it carefully. Our silver wash step is now complete. To really set off our bare metal parts, we're now going to edge highlight them by dry brushing them with Necron compound. You can see here that I moved on to using a fairly large makeup brush to apply the paint. Get yourself some inexpensive makeup brushes. They're great for dry brushing. After completing our dry brush step, all of our silver details are now complete. We next move on to the black armor pouches. We actually start by base coating them with a bluish gray color. Then we will darken them down in the next step so that they look like they're black. Here are the gray base-coated pouches. To make all of our pouches appear to be black leather, we simply apply a fairly heavy wash of nun oil to them. You may have to apply several coats to achieve a dark enough look. Here we have our completed pouches. The Techmarines axe has some bronze details, so we apply some Sycorax bronze to them to add some interest. We want to add a little bit of depth to the bronze details, so we give them a quick wash of Agrax Earthshade. All of the bronze details are now complete. We're going to finish off our Techmarine by painting the hilt of his axe to look like it's wrapped in red leather. To do this, we base coat it with pink horror. Finally, we wash the pink horror with a Carroburg Crimson wash. This settles into the recesses, darkening them, and also tints our pink shade to a red shade. And with that final step, our Techmarine is now completed. I hope you've enjoyed this video and found it informative. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to post them below and I'd be happy to respond. Don't forget to like this video and hit that subscribe button. I will be having many more painting tutorials in the coming weeks.